I'm here with professional dancer Henry Byalikov. Thank you so much for taking time to meet up with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So, before we get into your professional credits, why don't we talk a little bit about when you were drawn to dancing and when you decided this was going to be something I want to do as my life, as my career, as my blood?
Sure. It sort of happened by accident initially. I was 9 years old. I was at my best friend's birthday. I grew up in like a sort of Russian Jewish community. When I say Russian, I really mean Ukrainian people from Odessa, I think is exactly where they came from. It was basically like birthday boy has like a birthday dance, and usually his best friend will get up and dance with him to celebrate his birthday. I wasn't about it. Didn't know how to do it. It was really embarrassing. There was a lot of girls there that I was interested in, and I didn't want to make a fool of myself. So I lied to his mom, who co-owned the restaurant that we were at, and told her, I'm sick. She told my mom. My mom then asked me when I got home, what's the problem? You have a headache, fever, what is it? And I said, nothing, I'm good. She said, so why'd you tell her you were sick? And I said, because I just didn't want to get up and dance, make a fool of myself. So literally that week, she put me into a ballroom dancing Russian school that just happened to be down the road. So,
And you haven't looked back since?
I never looked back. But truly to make it, kind of work and become what I do for a living sort of happened at 21 when I entered into So You Think You Can Dance Australia. Before that, I was a competitive dancer, and all that I had done was competitive dancing, some shows, some teaching, but it was never really like something I thought as a career. It was something that I just was doing and for the foreseeable future. So You Think You Can Dance sort of opened my eyes to not just this array of styles, but also the ability to be a commercial dancer and a professional in a sort of commercial sphere that I was really attracted to. So that was really my foray. That was really what brought me into it.
When you were growing up and first starting to get into it, did you have to deal with any bullying or this isn't cool from your friends, or were they pretty decent about it?
Yeah, definitely. I was lucky to have a couple of friends that went to my school that also did it, so they copped a lot of flack as well. I think that the majority of it came when we were like fake tanned.
Yeah.
We'd come to school and our hands, like from the palm up, were white, and then the rest was all like fake tanner. So it was never a good look, but I don't know, I sort of blocked it out and dealt with it, because at the end of the day I was doing something I really enjoyed. I was dancing with girls, so I didn't see anything, inherently dissatisfying with it,
Right,
so
right.
it was competitive, it was athletic, it was kind of like an awesome, amazing sport.
Yeah, and in this day and age, nobody really cares
Yeah,
about
I
anything
mean,
like that anyway.
I don't know, I like I said, I sort of blocked out many of the negatives. I also was pretty smart at school to run the sort of middle ground of like not being too geeky but not being too like jockey, and just like I always partook in every social circle and sort of just followed that careful line.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that you tried out for So You Think You Can Dance Australia. What was that experience like for you when that was your first, when you first really started taking it super seriously?
Yeah, So You Think You Can Dance was mind-blowing, but I didn't approach it from the perspective of seriousness. I approached it from like, yeah, here's this thing I can do. Probably not going to make it far, so my expectations were set low. I auditioned and did the best that I could, but I was blown away. That audition day, I remember it was like a huge feeling, because we were in the Sydney Entertainment Centre, which is huge. And I watched a few of the dances, and I'm just like, holy crap, I didn't know people could do this. People jumping, flipping, turning. Music was pop music, and we don't really dance to pop music. We dance to like Latin music or
Right.
pop Latin. And it's like I was sort of taken aback by how amazing the expression was. And that sort of made me want to get into it more, but I still wanted to be safe, because I didn't want to think that I could do too much. So I just stuck to my path and being Latin and just doing Latin, Latin. But as I progressed and succeeded through various rounds, I kind of wanted to step into being more than just a Latin dancer. So I actually started doing gymnastics during my time on the show, which is kind of amazing, you know, for a kid that's never done that. That's ridiculous. Start that at 21. And I was taking classes trying to learn how to pirouette, how to do these jumps in my hotel room that I was in at the top 20 stage of So You Think. You know, I was a, you know, remarkable kid for thinking that he could do that. And I did.
I was going to say that is pretty remarkable to teach yourself gymnastics at 21.
Yeah, I mean, I learned how to backflip and do a back somersault and round off backflip. And then I executed that in my final solo on the show, which was kind of ironic. But, you know, things to come, it kind of, to me, is what it spoke about. It's like, you can do more, you know, and this is exactly what the show is about.
Yeah.
And so I think I really, you know, took a lot from that show, and I'm so grateful.
You also worked on Burn the Floor on Broadway. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, incredible. And again, it was weird to work on Burn the Floor. Burn the Floor was around when I was 16 and competing as you know, an amateur ballroom competitor. And, you know, it was something that I always thought about doing, but just never saw how it was ever going to eventuate. But as a result of So You Think You Can Dance and doing an amazing routine with the amazing Jason Gilkison, I did the African samba that he choreographed, and it kind of transformed my time on the show and transformed my sort of prism of seeing myself with Burn the Floor. And it just so happened that it worked out that we ended up doing a show together called Superstars of Dance. And then from that, I went straight onto Burn the Floor in San Francisco. And it got picked up for Broadway, you know.
It's exciting.
I don't want to say that it was my time on the show that,
Why not?
that had that effect, but certainly it's, you know, coincidences,
Yeah.
if you believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
But it was amazing, you know. Jason's amazing, the show was amazing, the cast was amazing. And so, you know, I had an incredible time.
And you were also part of the Mod Dance Company, right?
Yeah, Mod Dance Company was another incredible experience. Again, testament to my sort of ambitions to do other things. I went directly after Burn the Floor back home and enrolled myself into a ballet school for like 13 to 18-year-olds. I started taking open classes at like Sydney Dance Company, and there was a teacher there. His name's Tibor Horvath. Amazing ballet teacher, amazing passion. He was so passionate, and he recognized my passion, and he was working at this school called the Tanya Pearson's Academy of Dance or something. It's TPCCA or something like that. I can't remember exactly the name, but he brought me in. I auditioned. They picked me up. 8 months later, I finished. I did some accreditation and made it through the Royal Academy of Dance accreditation, and got picked up to do Mod, which was insane. It's insane. Just I was 24.
Yeah.
That's insane. But again, it was something that I wanted to do, was passionate about, and obviously had enough talent to get through. And they were kind and wonderful enough to audition me and pick me up.
Yeah.
And we had an incredible 4 months together.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously you were talented enough because here you are still dancing.
Yeah.
You were also in The Great Gatsby, right? You were a featured dancer in that. What was that experience like in such a big movie?
Yeah, The Great Gatsby was incredible because it was kind of like the tail end of my progression forward from TV and dancing on So You Think You Can Dance to, you know, Broadway, and then to these, to kind of into theater, and then musical theater. I did King Kong, the workshop, as an ensemble member, and then to film. So it's kind of like this amazing journey of education of how TV works, of how theater works, and then finally sort of how film works.
Right.
And it was just incredible. It was an incredible experience. I learned a lot just watching, you know, from whatever I was granted to see. I watched and learned and was just taken aback.
Yeah.
You know, you get to see these superstars around you, and you take in a lot. So I was, you know, exceedingly grateful for that opportunity. And that was kind of the not precursor, that was the tail end of my time in Australia. And then the year after that, I went and got picked up on Dancing with the Stars in
That
LA.
little show that no one ever heard of, right?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Now, you started out in 2012, right, as a troupe member?
Yes.
And then when did you jump up to a
It was end of 2014. I ended up doing, I was picked up as a pro. Dancing with the Stars was kind of another pivotal moment in my career because in 2010, at the end of the Burn the Floor run, a few of us were picked up because we did a little LA stint to advertise for Burn the Floor on Broadway. There were a few of us that were interviewed as professional dancers, and it was wonderful to have that experience. And then we were given contracts, and then 2010, that's when the contracts were given. We wrote down whatever we wrote down, and then fate had it that, I wasn't picked up, somebody else was picked up, and another,
Right.
whatever. And then some people stayed in New York and then moved to LA to become the first troupe members. I went back to Australia, did my sort of re-education and whatever it was. But being picked up in 2012, I was messaged via a social media app, would you like to be on the troupe? And that was by one of the co-executive producers, which was insane. For me, it meant a lot because of that. I wasn't picked up in 2010, and then now I am in such an interesting way.
Right.
It was huge. Then moving to LA and living sort of a life of, you're essentially a TV star, but you're not the star, but you're on this huge primetime TV show. So it has all these different aspects that you can get caught up in. For me, the biggest part was establishing myself in the American market. So first, I knew a lot of dancers on the show, but I didn't quite know how the show worked. The lifestyle of living in LA, you got to get yourself kind of grounded. It was huge. It was a huge transformational process. And again, I learned a hell of a lot. How camera work plays a huge importance in your routines on Dancing with the Stars. Working with the producers to nail down the best, the most productive ways to present your art. Working with the other castmates, watching how they do their thing, learning from them, and then kind of progressing. All the while figuring out what the hell you want to do as a dancer,
Right. So that was probably obviously very challenging. What was more challenging to you, coming up with the dances each week for you and Diana, or actually executing them once you started rehearsing?
So there's a huge difference between being a troupe member and being a professional on the show. Troupe members are, when I was on initially, we actually choreographed opening numbers. We choreograph our own bumpers, which are those into commercial and out to commercial dances. You step in for pros if they're injured. You join for trio weeks. It's really enjoyable. It's a fun job to do, but it's not a pro. You know what I mean? You don't get to experience really what Dancing with the Stars is like.
Right.
So much so. I did it in Australia, and I had Tony Perrin as my partner, and that was an amazing, amazing time. So then to be, to finally become a pro again on Dancing with the Stars in America, it was a huge challenge because it's a bigger audience. It's a more established show, still the same sort of thing,
Right.
but there's a bigger aspect to it. Diana was wonderful to work with. I think the hardest part for me was understanding what her advantages and disadvantages were and how to present them in the best possible light, which I think I did. But the hardest part comes really from who are you competing with, and how do you fall into that mix?
Right.
If it was a competition of all Henry Byalikovs and Diana Naiads, I think I would have fared very well. But at that time, you had Amy Purdy, you had Meryl Davis, so it's obviously not going to be the same, which was difficult because then I I wasn't able to have another season as a professional on the show, which kind of sucked because I had so many ideas and so many things that I would have loved to have explored. But again, that's fate.
Right.
And thank God for that, because then I was able to move on and do other things, which, for example, I got to be a principal and an ensemble member in Your Arms with Christopher Gattelli, which kind of is my first foray into the American musical theater market, with like one of the best world-renowned choreographers, Christopher Gattelli.
Right, absolutely.
And every one of those cast members that I got to work with is actually on Broadway or doing something amazing within the musical theater realm. So I was, very fortunate. Everything is kind of, with hindsight, makes perfect sense. In the moment, though,
It's tough.
yeah.
What, when you spoke about the King Kong, it's not the same King Kong that's currently on Broadway, is it?
It was.
It was,
So
really?
the King Kong workshop that I got to be a part of back in 2011 is the same King Kong that's on Broadway now, which is awesome.
That is awesome.
I auditioned for it, didn't get through, but I was very close. But still, it was, I'm so lucky that I got that opportunity.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out? As you said, you didn't come from wanting to be a dancer your whole life, pretty early on, but it wasn't like you had a burning desire for it until you were kind of thrown into it. So what advice would you give to somebody who may be just like you, or somebody who was born with the intense desire and they knew, like, as soon as they could have a cognitive thought that that's what they wanted to do full time? Because you've done so much and are so successful.
Thank you. I would say that, it'll come down to putting yourself in the right company, so to speak, so that you can grow. For me, it just happened to be these different TV shows or theatrical companies or film or, those kinds of things that allowed me to kind of, by friction, bump off here and jump off there and learn a lot. My ambition never waned. It was always, for me, I want to be the best that I can, and that propelled me. So anyone with that kind of burning desire, I think they'll find their way. But if I'm talking to an ideal candidate, speak to your parents about putting you into performing arts school. I feel like no matter where you are, they're run really well and they really prepare you really well for your future. Learn about music. I think that's the key thing for a dancer. I never learnt about music. I'm only now learning musical theory and rhythm and eurythmics and all these different aspects that I was like, oh my God, this is like fundamentals. You don't know this? How do you call yourself a dancer or a musical theater person?
Right.
So learn the basics that surround your industry. So that means ballet. That means musical theory. That means learn singing. Learn acting. Combine all of it, because it's all the same thing. It's all an expression of some sort of story. And the more that you can understand how to express these things, the better. So performing arts school helps with that. Private tuition helps with that. Open classes helps with that. Finding a community nowadays is much easier. So I would say that's very important. That's probably what I would do.
And finally, what does it feel like coming from, obviously not having any experience? You have all this experience now, and people look up to you for advice and emulate your career. What does that feel like?
I feel very honored and very privileged to have had the career I've had. That's not to say that it's not going to grow.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely
I
going to
didn't
grow.
mean it to sound like that's the end.
No, not at all.
They only want to be like you until this point, and then
Not
you're
at
going to
all.
be going back.
Not at
to
all,
nothing
not at
again.
all. But if I have anything to do with it,
Yeah.
I'm going to grow it more. I think another fundamental aspect of any achievement, no matter how small or big, is you have to find a way to help others. And that's not to say just like help others without any understanding. You need to achieve a level of technical proficiency or a level of, I know how to apply this skill
Right.
100%. Because if you don't, then you're kind of diluting the world with information that doesn't need to be there.
Right.
But you can still inspire. I think that's a wonderful thing, and motivate. And so again, your question is, how does it feel? It feels wonderful, but I'd like to become more proficient so that I can help more. Because ultimately, I think it all does the same thing. The more proficient you are at the performing arts, the more of a message you're able to give in a more succinct, in a more profound way to help educate and tell a story to better mankind. Because that's what it comes down to. Whether it's through your ability on stage or film or TV, or your ability to communicate, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, that's what it should come down to, and that's what I hope, to be able to give.
Are you primarily New York based now, or are you bi-coastal?
I'm primarily New York based, but I think I'm going to be bi-coastal because my girlfriend is now in the Hamilton Peggy tour.
Okay.
So she's now going to be in San Francisco, which means I'm going to be on the West Coast a little bit more. So, yeah, I mean, I have an agency there as well, so I will never say no to anything from the West Coast.
Yeah.
But I do. I live in the East Coast. So.
What kind of projects are you going after currently, or what news do you have to share?
My goal right now is I want to be on Broadway, so that's primary. But that's not to say that I wouldn't accept, a TV role on the West Coast or a touring musical theater role. It doesn't really matter as long as I'm able to practice my craft. I'll go wherever the wind goes.
So there are acting aspirations.
Oh my God, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Acting aspirations for sure. That's kind of the last.
Frontier.
Yes, the last frontier that I'm very interested in crossing. But right now I'm so consumed with singing and music that musical theater is the primary goal.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, it will inherently be acting based too. So I will be stepping into that, but that's primary.
That's great. Well, you dance beautifully. You're a joy to watch when people do get to see you perform, and I really appreciate you taking time to meet up with me. It's been a real blast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.